the Barney and Clyde bonus Patreon materials.
I don't mind if you, as long as you give, connected with it. So I started the recording 9 seconds ago. So anything from this point forward, I will send you access to the raw file. After I edit it with the turn it into an MP3, so it's pretty, it's usually about 30 megabytes, 30 to 45
Okay.
megabytes. I do it at about 128 variable, and I'll send that to you.
Okay,
And
perfect.
you can do whatever. All I would do is ask you to, make sure you tell people that I have a podcast, Ma Liberty and stuff and all that stuff. I would appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. At what little I can, I will promote the hell out of it on whatever platform we have, which is almost none. But
Yeah. How is yours going, by the way?
um, it ebbs and flows. We had Jacob Hornberger on
Really?
yesterday, so that was pretty freaking exciting. And he's just great, man. Like he's so fun to talk to, and he's such a genuine libertarian and such a you know just a nice, welcoming guy. And I think I know like, a lot of people don't love where he stands on a lot of things, but just as a person to talk to, whether you agree with him or not, just he's just a blast to talk to, and he's absolutely polite, and if he disagrees with you, he's absolutely not rude about it in any way,
Yeah.
and just a super nice guy.
Yeah. Well, I'd be excited to get him on, and I've also talked to Joshua Dial, who's
Yeah,
an
cool.
interesting fellow, and he's actually said that once things calm down, he's thinking sometime in the May timeframe that he would come on the podcast. I've also got John C. Dvorak that's agreed to come on the podcast.
You said that. That is so
Just
exciting.
he just said it's going to be 1 to 2 months from now, so May or June is the time frame for that. And then also I've requested through Reason Magazine for Nick Gillespie to come on.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool.
I'm just waiting for a response. I haven't gotten a response yet, so I know
You
he's
know what
busy.
though?
They
You
they
put it out
record
there and
stuff every.
ask.
Huh? I did. I asked on Twitter. I asked, and he actually sent me a message back saying, "Please go through this person at Reason and ask for and request." And I did, and I haven't gotten a response, so I replied back.
Right. Well, it
So
sounds like you're throwing a lot of requests out there, and some of them are biting. Now you got Larry Sharp on, for crying out loud. Like,
yeah, in a short period of time.
that's amazing.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm going to do a countdown here, and we'll take this countdown and take it from there.
Okay.
3, 2, 1. Hello, and welcome to the Mo Liberty and Stuff podcast. I am your host, Paul Shin. Hello. And I have with me another guest for another episode. And as usual, I will ask my guests to introduce themselves.
I'm Clyde Myers. I'm I don't know what value I have to this podcast. I'm a libertarian, former libertarian candidate for office. I'm an IT professional. I do some blogging, published writer, stuff like that. So I'm one of those people who's a jack of all trades, master of none, monetizer of very few.
Well, no, I see you as having a much higher position than that because as a fan of My Liberty and Stuff podcast, you are also a friend of mine. We've been friends for actually, you're one of my oldest Columbus friends.
That's cool.
I've been in Columbus since 2005, and I want to say I met you in like 2005 or six.
I
So
think it was a little later than that. More, I think it was,
was
yes, you're right. No, it was 2006. You're right.
2006. And but we kind of lost touch with each other for I don't know 5-7 years, something like that, and
Yeah,
then
something like that.
we got back in to being friends again and actually getting closer. Heck, I got invited to a birthday party at Clyde's house. It was Clyde's birthday, and I was able to enjoy not only being around Clyde but his family, and eating some of your dad's fish. Fried fish was fabulous.
He does.
Um,
He does it right.
Oh my gosh. And then, seeing some of the sustainable things that you do in your house. But, the podcast, we talk about so much and so the varied types of content here. But I always ask one question at the beginning. And, you've told us that you're a libertarian, you've run for office. And I'm going to ask a similar question that I asked Larry Sharp on a previous episode number 5, for those that haven't checked recently. Episode number 5 was Larry Sharp. So I asked Larry, what, when you wake up in the morning, what do you think about in terms of liberty, whether it's personal liberty or liberty for everyone? What are the things that you think about that makes you go out and search things out on a daily basis?
Well, to me, I think that that human freedom is absolutely paramount to human flourishing. And Barney and I talk about this on our podcast a lot, but it's like the conditions that have brought peace and prosperity, and the conditions that have brought personal enrichment and good quality of life have always been when people are left to pursue their interests without coercive force in their lives from other places. So whether that's coercive force from government or coercive force from other types of organizations, corporations, whatever type of entity, when people are left alone to be able to pursue their individual interests, that's when they actually serve their fellow man, and that's when society blossoms. And I think that all of the tyrannies that have ever happened in the world, and honestly where we're heading, is when societies depart from that. And so when I get up in the morning and when I think about freedom, what goes through my mind is how little of it we still have, and how much of it is eroding. And honestly, since the COVID-19 thing started, I've really been watching people just eager for more and more authoritarianism in their lives, and it's kept me up a few nights, to be honest. So I wish I could paint a more more optimistic view of where society is going, but when I think about freedom, the thing I think about is I worry that it's not something that my kids are going to be able to celebrate.
So why do you think that when people bring up, usually on social media, bring up that they are frustrated with the fact that their personal freedoms and liberties are being attacked and they want more, that the first thing that someone does is attack them for wanting that freedom?
Why do I think that is?
Yeah,
Well, I think that
it bothers me.
it bothers me a lot too. I think that they think that because we have been taught all our lives through our schooling system and through our culture that that shut up and get in line is how you get things done. How you that if people are left to their own devices, if people are left to choose their own paths, that they will choose to cheat people, they will choose to hurt people, and that kind of stuff, which really is not the truth at all. When people were free at the beginning of this country, when people were free and they kept all their money, they made so much for other people. The productive capacity of early America was incredible, and the amount of charity and generosity that people bestowed on other people was also it was unparalleled throughout history. Alexis de Tocqueville wrote, I think in the 1820s or 30s, that that he as a Frenchman, they had gone through their revolutions and such, and he couldn't believe, as he toured the American continent, that the individuals in America were so generous and so freely giving of their own resources to other people. And I think things go bad when we all depart from that.
At a minimum, yeah. It's that it's almost like that, you know, if you don't realize, and I know I'm completely destroying this quote, but you know, if you don't educate yourself on history, you're deemed to repeat that history.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Um,
Because
and it's almost like a self-perpetuating prophecy. It's almost like we just, a cyclical thing. We continue to repeat history. It's interesting. Milton Friedman had a great quote too. He was saying, I can't remember which crowd he was addressing, but in one of his famous speeches, you can find it out there on YouTube. He was saying that what was clear at the end of the 20th century, we had many communist regimes, socialist regimes, the Soviet Union, China, that just resulted in the deaths and agony of millions and millions of people. I mean, we're talking upwards of 60, maybe 100 million people between the Soviet Union, China, Vietnam, Cambodia, Cuba. So all these socialist regimes that had done all these nightmarish things, and how their economic systems were complete and total abject failures, just complete flops. And he said that what was clear at the end of the 20th century is that socialism had brought you know the worst aspects of human life. And what everybody gathered from that was that the one thing the world needs is more socialism.
exactly.
You know what I mean? It's amazing that people continue to parse out exactly the wrong answers from all these lessons that history keeps trying to teach us.
Well, and I think part of it is that some people, even our country, the United States, for those of you listening outside of the country, we do have a couple of listeners based on my statistics from Canada. So I'm hoping to get some more from the Middle East. I have some friends that are going to be coming on as a podcast guest later on, from Turkey, from Palestine, and from Germany. So this is
Cool.
going to be kind of an interesting talk. But you know that they have some social aspects to some of their some of their political positions, but also from some of their social aspects of their government, and we
Hmm.
do too. I mean, look at Medicare, Medicaid. That's as close as we come to socialized anything, right there.
Our
So
entire medical system is socialized. If I hear one more time that the American free market system is failing people, I'm going to puke in my mouth, because there's not one thing about our system that's free market. Like, nothing. The government decides everything top down about healthcare. If that was the case, if it was anywhere a free market, then you and let's go build a hospital tomorrow. We can't do that because
good luck.
they decide where a hospital goes. They decide when a hospital gets built. They get to decide how much ground you can use for it, or how many beds you can put in it. So there's no way that we could even try to compete in the free market. If you and I went into a partnership and started our own hospital, obviously we could make money in the medical field. Look at how much money they charge for common everyday treatments. We could just cut the price in half and still make out like bandits. But you can't do that because they decide when and where anyone can compete in the industry.
It's sad. It really is. I mean, I think there's a bright spot in every once in a while. There's a doctor I was listening to a podcast. Here it is, a podcast talking about other people's podcasts. So it was a podcast. He was talking to a doctor that had a small practice in either Oklahoma or Nebraska.
Uh-huh.
And I don't have a producer on this, so I'm sure someone can look this up and verify it. But what he was doing was he was not taking insurance, and he
Yes.
was putting a value on a doctor's call. So if you said, "Hey, I need to come see the doctor. I don't have insurance," and he said, "Well, our going rate is $45, whatever it was, $45 for a visit, and they say, I really can't afford that. This is my situation. I've got this many kids. I'm working at McDonald's or wherever they're working. I just can't afford that. He would either say, sure. What we can do is I'll just charge you. How's $30 sound? Or he would say, what do you think if you can stay a client for me? We can just charge you a monthly rate, a monthly fee for you and your entire family, and you start coming to see just me. I'll diagnose you. I'll prescribe you medicines. I'll get you X-rays and things like that for a standard fee. How does that
Mm-hmm.
sound? And I almost cried a tear because I was thinking of not only members of my own family that don't have insurance, but people outside in our community here in Indiana, but people
Mm-hmm.
all across this country. If they had that as a viable option, don't you think that some of them would take it?
Absolutely. What you're talking about is a model called direct primary care. Um, so that model being that the doctor has a subscription service, just like a lot of software has a subscription model, your Netflix has a subscription model, those kinds of things. So you subscribe to your medical care. You don't need insurance for bumps and bruises and runny noses and stuff like that. They're inevitable. You're going to get sick probably every year, and you're going to have to go to the doctor probably multiple times a year. You're probably going to get little cuts and abrasions if you're not, hiding under your bed all the time. You're living a life. You're going to have a little bit of injuries and such like that. You're going to get sick once in a while. So you subscribe to this direct primary care service. A lot of them that provide direct primary care, they don't even accept insurance, right? And so you
Right.
go as many times as you need to, as many times as you get sick, and there's no extra fee. And then if you have to get, some type of a bigger operation or service that's not included in your direct primary care subscription, then you pay for that either out of pocket, or you can supplement that with insurance through another provider. They can, remit you to a specialist and things like that. So that's a very, very, very good model, and people are fighting against it hard, for reasons I can't understand. They don't understand the economics of it, I'm sure. But that's a model that really drives down the cost of healthcare and makes it way more accessible to all kinds of people.
Yeah. So we've talked about, personal liberties. We've talked about, thoughts on, because, the Milton Friedman, and I consider him one of the, if you could have a trifecta of economic strategists or purely, economists, he would definitely be in my trifecta. Like I have a
Absolutely.
trifecta. When it comes to music, I have a trifecta of blues, and some
Okay,
some people struggle with that, and I'll go ahead and tell you what that is.
I'm
That
ready.
is, are you ready?
Yeah,
BB
hit me.
King,
Okay.
Buddy Guy,
Okay.
Stevie Ray Vaughan.
I dig it.
All right.
I
So I
tell
have
you
a
what though, I would, if it personally for me, I would go Albert King,
oh,
Lightning Hopkins, and God damn it, what's his name? Son
Robert Johnson.
House. Son
Oh, Son
House.
House. Oh, so see, I have this trifecta because I have uh, Buddy Guy is very near and dear to me because I've sat down and when I'm a recovering alcoholic, folks, if you didn't know, but when I drank, I actually went to the his blues bar
Hmm.
in Chicago and was sitting down just listening to open mic night and eating dinner. And you couldn't, and this tells you how long ago this was. You couldn't smoke in the area where you could eat, but you could smoke at the bar.
Hmm.
So it was only about 20 feet away, which I think was kind of funny that there was only a 20-foot barrier between the restaurant and the bar. So I
Right.
go and I sit down and I have a stogie, and I know that my food's going to take about 40 minutes, and I've got a stogie that's 55 minutes, and I light it up and I order a beer. And sitting next to me are two guys talking, and one of the guys turns to the bartender and says, "Grab me another one." And she took out a glass, filled it with ice, and poured a Heineken over ice. and
Okay.
passed it over. And I said, I've never seen that before. I'm interested. Who is this person? It was freaking Buddy Guy.
No kidding.
And then I just proceeded to listen to their conversation. He proceeded to look over, and we had a nice 5 minute conversation. So that's that, along with what he's done for music over 5 decades of music
Holy
in the
crap.
Chicago blues scene. He automatically got put into that trifecta, because I would have
Wow,
put
man.
somebody like an Albert King or a Lightning Hopkins or a Robert Johnson in there, but Buddy Guy just got put in there. Stevie Ray Vaughan, obviously, why I put him in there, and BB King for me. But that's my group. But
That's
anyway,
cool.
we're digressing off to music, which you and I could sit here and talk just as long about music as we do about personal liberty. Um,
Probably.
but
That's the and
that
stuff part, right?
that's why it says liberty and stuff.
And stuff.
We've
It's also
talked a lot
stuff.
about stuff, actually it's about 6 episodes. This is episode number 7. We're about 50-50 with liberty and
Oh
stuff.
man,
So
you're at the threshold. The average podcast only makes it 7 episodes. So if you get an eighth episode down, then you're on the longevity path.
sweet. This is awesome. And yeah, let's table that for a little bit later on in the conversation, because I got something to bring up to you too. Because you are a vodcaster slash podcaster, and I've got some items I'd like to ask you about, and I think it'd be great for the podcast. But back
Okay.
to the trifecta of economists.
Mm-hmm.
Uncle Milty, as I call him, Milton
Uncle
Friedman is
Milty.
in there. I put Hayek in there,
Okay.
and I don't know who a third would be. So who would a third be? Who would you suggest to me if those are the two people that I see as? Would it be a Bastat, or would it be someone with a more classical view of economy, or would it
Well,
be
what
someone more recent?
what about Murray Rothbard?
Well, I didn't want. I have a special place in my heart for Murray, and I just ordered Anatomy of the State,
Okay.
because I've only read it on a PDF on my phone, and I
Uh-huh.
feel as though I don't have the ability to take the notes that I need to take, and I know I'm going to write a lot of notes when I reread that book.
Oh man, we should talk about it afterwards. I'd love to. I've only read excerpts from that one, but man, there's some great stuff in there.
Well, I read the Libertarian Manifesto, and I could barely put that down.
Yeah.
But Anatomy of the State was something that somebody told me to go on Mises Institute. The book is free. All the Rothbard books are free. Go on there, download the PDF, and listen.
That's it. Yeah,
And
yeah. On their website, yeah, you can read not just the books, but you can read tons of articles by Rothbard and other people. Just mind blowing stuff. And the great thing about Rothbard was, then Anatomy of the State. Like, I really think you hit the nail on the head that's something that everyone should read. If you want to understand what the true nature of government is, read Anatomy of the State, and think about what other groups or what other people you would let get away with the things that government does to every single citizen. And when you read Anatomy of the State, Rothbard just it's what's funny. He's such a character. If you watch some video footage of him, he's just a silly, charming, kind of chubby guy he's just he looks like he's hilarious,
right,
and absolutely charming. Um, but he's taught in that book. He's just talking about how the the government operates exactly like a mafia, right? They break your leg and then they sell you a cast. Like that's the kind of stuff that the government does. That they have no ability to produce anything. People look at government as able to produce healthcare, or they should be producing like the post office or whatever, but they have no ability to produce anything, and all they do is suck resources from society, and then they run it through a wood chipper of bureaucracy and lining the pockets of whoever is in with the elites, and then some money trickles back down into whatever your pet cause is. But in the Anatomy of the State, he just talks about what just an evil, corrupt, impossible to reform entity government truly is. Not the American government, but just government. The ruling of people by other people is just, it's an impossible system. So that's a brilliant read. I highly recommend anyone tackle it.
I'm glad you didn't ruin the book for me, because you didn't. No, but what I would also say is, I think it was kind of telling because the date of this book, if folks are interested in, again, Murray Rothbard is the author, Anatomy of the State. It looks like an anatomy book on the outside of it. It was written in 1974, and the telling thing for me is what two government organizations were invented just before that book was written.
Is it the Department of Education?
Department of Education. Well, Department of Education there was some semblance of it before that, but I think it really didn't exist until I think Jimmy Carter was the one that put it into play, or Nixon had it, and then Carter put it into play, and it's like 78. But yes, the Department of Education, but also the EPA.
Ah, okay. Interesting.
This just to me that I think about time in history and how important, as we talked about earlier, if you don't realize what was going on at the time when something was written, just it doesn't matter if you're reading Wuthering Heights, what was going on in society when that book was written that allowed Emily Bront to write the book the way she did. What about Nelson DeMille when he wrote Plum Island was going on in 1986 to 1988? You know?
Yeah, you have to have the cultural context of the time.
Context, perspective, what is your background, and that's why I think it's so great to sit here and talk to you. I mean, you're a musician, you have an acumen for IT, so you have my undying gratitude, because when it comes to things that are all things Mac, I come to you. But also just in general for audio quality. Clyde has actually helped Mud Liberty and Stuff podcast come up with a secondary solution, so I'm able to record in two locations. The mic that I'm using right now, I'll name drop, is a Blue Snowball, so it's a very basic USB microphone. Nothing extra special. You can pick them up for $40 to $50 new on Facebook Messenger, 30 bucks or so. And then I got a Chinese knockoff condenser mic, but it needed 48-volt phantom power. And Clyde was able to hook me up with a tube preamp to hook that up. So if you listen to the audio quality of this episode number 7, go back one episode and listen to the episode I did with Felipe Martinez. That episode was done with a cheap knockoff condenser mic with a 48-volt phantom power on a tube preamp, and the sound quality is a little different. It's a little maybe warmer. Maybe not. You be the judge. So Clyde is that guy that brings me some insight, and I appreciate all things Clyde in this podcast. So,
well, I appreciate those kind words, and yeah, I appreciate the invitation to come on here and spend the time talking to somebody like you that I greatly respect, and we always have a pretty good dynamic conversation. I think we're, not a one-to-one match as far as views, but we always have a riveting conversation, I think. And
that's part of, in my opinion, one of the things I had to learn about being a libertarian. And I'm talking about big L libertarian, not little L libertarian. If you need to know the difference, go on the Googles and look that up. But being the Clyde and I are both big L libertarians is realizing that we can have different views on every single subject. But the cool part is we can sit here and talk about them all, even if we don't agree. And I respect, at the end of the day, when we walk away, we shake hands. Right, not right now. It would be more of an elbow bump, or from 6 feet away, it'd be flipping each other off. But in most cases, it would be a shaking of the hands, and then we walk away. And if anything, I would say I respect Clyde more because of the position that he holds, and that's what I see different in whether you look at being a libertarian as a political party or whether you look at libertarianism as being a classical liberal,
Hmm.
and your views on society and your views on business and your views on money, but we can still sit down and have a conversation. And, you know, I like that, where I feel as though there's a box that's put around the R's and the D's that if you don't fall in line with this, you're considered a fanatic or an extremist.
Right. Well, really, anyone who can, whether they're libertarian or whatever they are, anyone who can articulate their positions and defend them well with, with integrity and facts without getting all bent out of shape. I mean, I have so much respect for that. And even if somebody's an out and out socialist, there are very few people who self-identify as socialists who can, I think, can reasonably articulate that message. Usually you can destroy those people pretty easily. But there are a few. There's people like Jimmy Dore. I don't know if you're familiar with Jimmy Dore, the Jimmy Dore Show. Um,
As a British comedian,
no, he's not British, but he's a comedian. I think he's L.A. based, maybe New York. I'm not sure. He's one of those coastal things, but he's hilarious. And he's an out and outright self-proclaimed democratic socialist. He's very anti-war, so he's got my respect there. But he articulates that message really, really well, and he puts it in a comparison context against, how government operates currently and what their vision is. And I don't want to go down a rabbit hole on it, but he can defend that position, right? And I think that you do the same thing on the libertarian side. Like you can defend the positions that you have, and if somebody disagrees with them, you're not horrible to them. There might be a snarky meme here and there, but people get to have their opinions.
right? I
You
mean,
know,
I do have a troll. I do have a troll, and I get to respond quite interestingly to him.
yeah, he's fun.
But he is interesting to talk to, and I know it's going to happen. I just sometimes it's delayed by a day or two. But
Yeah,
no, I agree. We can have our debates, and I think that's what's even more confusing on social media, mostly on Facebook. On Twitter, it's more like the Wild Wild West still. But on Facebook, if you put something that slams Trump, all your Democrat friends show up and agree with you.
yeah,
And as soon as you, and a couple of Republicans will give snarky responses. And as soon as you put something that's that slams Pelosi or Schumer or Biden, um, all the Republicans come in and respond.
yeah,
And then there's a couple of snarky comments from the Democrats. But you put something libertarian, both Democrats and Republicans only put snark or don't respond at all. And all of the liberty loving people, whether they vote libertarian or they just have the libertarian ideals and don't vote at all, which I have friends like that too. I'm sure you do. Um, it's just interesting to watch the dynamic. And
it
people don't
is.
understand why I would slam, in 2016, why I would slam Hillary and 5 minutes later slam Trump. They don't understand. They
Right.
can't comprehend. Their brains almost explode.
Which is amazing. Again, we talked about like people always coming to the wrong conclusion when faced with the information. Like how you could listen to Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump in 2016 and come away with either one of them being a decent human being is just it's unfathomable to me. But you know, I people just love their teams.
Right. I love my teams too, mostly on the sports side.
Yeah.
But I think it's just such an interesting world we live in now. One last thing, we're coming towards the end of the podcast, and I always like to ask something a little off or different sometimes. And not that this is either off or different, but you are the seed man. And I like for you to kind of explain some of the things that you do in regards to seed. But before you do, I'd just like to say one of the cool things that Clyde has done recently was Clyde got an idea. Not all ideas are original, but Clyde got an idea from someone else to start a barter site group within Facebook here for just our county. So it only works in our county. You have to live in our county, and no money will change hands. So people started putting things that they either had to get rid of or wanted and were in search of. And it's already worked out really well in my favor.
Yeah,
And I
me
know
too.
you had, and for you, Clyde, I know that you had put some things on there, like, hey, I'm looking for some lettuce bulbs. I'd like to, what else do you have? Here's what I've got to in trade. I've got some onion and I've got this and this, but more so than just the barter aspect. Can you kind of explain you're trying to get to that self-sustaining food place?
Yeah, sure. Um, well, I mean, I've always been a very outdoorsy type of person, you know. I grew up, my dad always took us hunting and fishing and all that kind of stuff, and we'd always look for morel mushrooms every spring and that kind of stuff. And I started getting into organic gardening, I don't know, maybe about 12 years ago or so, and I started growing some of my own stuff, and I just came to this conclusion that I was terrible at this. You know, I couldn't grow anything. I had the nothing resembling a green thumb. So I started foraging again. Like I was, you know what? I haven't gone mushroom hunting since I was a kid. I haven't gone out looking for morels since I was a kid. So I went out looking for morels one day, and I didn't find any, but I found a whole bunch of wild garlic, like the narrow leaf, flat leaf garlic.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, well, crap. I don't have to come home empty handed. You know, what else like this is there out there? What else can I find? And at the time, I was just unbelievably short of money, right? So I was like, I could really supplement my life with this food, with free food. Where can I get more of it? So I started learning about all the different types of plants that just naturally grow wild and produce food. And I started gathering a lot of those, trying new things. Found cattails, hundreds and hundreds of cattails just right outside my door, just blocks from my house, where there was a natural stream. And, the vegetable at the end of a cattail shoot, at the very base before the rhizome, tastes remarkably like cucumber and sort of has um, the texture of like celery.
Hmm.
It's not quite as hard and crunchy as celery, but it's akin to it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's amazing. It's delicious, and I just found all kinds of these other things, and so I started collecting tons of wild food. I started deer hunting again, so I would make sure that I had a couple deer in the freezer every year. That I would have, several pounds of things like wild parsnips, good carbohydrates in the freezer, and then I started growing again and doing organic gardening, and I started to get good at it finally.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still learning a lot about it, and I still kill a lot of plants, make a lot of mistakes. But now I have a pretty substantial garden, and this COVID-19 thing has really, really hit me pretty hard. It's like, we were always keeping a little bit of extra stuff, extra beans, extra things. We had some emergency candles, we have some matches, we have a few things. But we sort of let that dwindle down and got out of practice, and then boom, this hits, and I'm just thinking, man, I've got to change my garden strategy from growing all these plants. I was reducing carbs, losing weight, trying to stay fit. So I was reducing carbs. So I was growing a lot of leafy greens, but leafy greens aren't food. They're nutrition, but they're not food. They're not macronutrients. They're not carbohydrates. They're not proteins. They're not fats. They're just vitamins and minerals, which are good, and you need those. But to sustain life, you've got to have carbs, fats, and protein, right? So I
Right.
started growing lots and lots of protein food. So I planted tons of peas and tons of beans, and I try to save my seeds back from that whenever possible, so that it's got to be sustainable, right? If the lights go out, you have to be able to keep, the process moving forward. You're going to have to be able to plant next year. Um, So I'm hoping to get to that point. And I was working with the Seed Brown County Feed Brown County, with my friend Tori Ray, who runs that organization, who's brilliant. She started this whole like sort of cooperative growers association in Brown County, Indiana, and they have 2 or 3 seed swaps every year, as well as classes. A lot of them free, some of them a very nominal charge. She taught worm composting. She's taught. Well, I've taught wild food foraging there several times. They have these free seeds. You come to the event, and everyone brings their extra seeds, put them on the table. You take what you want, you bring what you got. You don't have to bring anything. You can just take if you want. Nobody's been a jerk about it. Everyone's been very cool, very generous. And in the COVID-19 situation, that couldn't happen. She started the Brown County barter page, and it was wildly successful, and people just trading the things that they need. And it was kind of an offshoot of the cooperative gardening page, and people were trading seeds there too. And so I started one like that, just a complete copycat site. Like, when you see something that works and is really good, give credit and spin off from it. So that's what we did with that one, and it's been pretty successful in that regard. But I'm thinking about changing it to be barter and paying it forward, because I noticed that a lot of people are just getting rid of stuff. People just, hey, I need a thing. Like, okay, I've got one of those. You can have it. I don't really need anything, so just come pick it up. But the seed swap couldn't happen. Those a lot of those swaps aren't happening because of the shelter in place orders and things like that. People aren't interacting socially. So I had people online just sent me seeds. This one lady sent me like, I don't know, about 7 packets of cabbage seeds. I was looking for a specific variety, and she sent me 7 varieties, and didn't want anything in exchange for it. And I had onion sets I was going to trade for some cabbage seed. She's like, yeah, I got plenty of onions. There was another person on there that said, well, I'd like to have the onions. What do you want to trade? I was like, forget about it. I've already got what I want. I'll just send you the onions. So we just sort of did this, circular swap of goods. And it's really been amazing to watch people be so generous and cooperative.
And this is all without licensing, of course, right?
Yeah. There's nothing official, but I don't think you need any, right? I mean,
if you look at what's going on in Vermont, for example, they actually in Walmart were not. There's proof of this. They were not letting anybody buy seeds in Walmart.
Right.
And I know that's not the only place, but that was definitely going on in Vermont, home of Bernie Sanders, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. Like, so we were talking about this with Jacob Hornberger on Barney and Clyde. We were talking about how, you think of America as this free place, but we have all these central planners deciding for us what's essential and what's not. So when this crisis happens, suddenly everyone decides what's essential, right? And seeds aren't essential. Like, give me a break, man. Like, that's the most essential thing that there is, is the food supply, not just the can of beans on the shelf, but like, access to be self-reliant. And I really think that that's what is the biggest travesty here, is that they are trying to kill people's ability to be self-reliant.
Because they want everyone to become a statist.
Yeah, you need to be a good
slave. We want you to rely on the state. Please come to the state. Well, the state will take care of you. Here's it's not COVID money anymore. It's a monthly stipend. Here is your, you got to look at Andrew Yang.
Mm-hmm.
That's just from a monetary perspective. But now we hear you want your clothing, you want your this, you want your that. You need to come to us. You don't need seeds. We'll take care of your food needs.
Yeah. Boy, that Yang SOB screwed it up, man. He put this thought into people's heads that the government can just distribute pixie dust money to everybody, and he had a bunch of fancy math to back it up. And he might be right if all of those factors that went off exactly as he had proposed, but that's not the way bureaucracy happens, and that's not the way government works. They're going to keep extracting this. They're going to keep they're going to poorly manage it, and now everyone has the idea that this universal basic income it is a viable option, even with the cronyism and even with the sheer incompetence in American government. And thanks to that Yang SOB, we'll never get rid of this darn thing.
Yeah. It's he brings up a valid point of something we need to discuss, but yeah, the way he went about it was
yeah, he's a smart guy, and he's not wrong per se, but he's like one of those. He's assumes he has all of the data, he has all of the information, he has run all of the scenarios, but he hasn't. He's only run one scenario. That's you give people $1,000 a month, and then you show the model of how that would affect the economy. But there's millions of moving parts in an economy, and there's 535 people that all have corporations and lobbyists and people with their hands in the till. The sheer amount of people living on the government dole. I'm not talking about people getting welfare. I'm talking about corporate welfare and things like that. There's so many people living off of government money that I don't think he took that into consideration.
Well, as we're continuing to talk here because sometimes we don't end the podcast when I want to end the podcast because the conversation is just too good. This check that people got. They just printed more money.
Yeah.
But my question is, why not just stop taking tax money from people for a period of time?
Oh my gosh, Paul!
I am horrible. I'm a horrible person for even bringing that up, aren't I?
Yes, you want old ladies to die.
I want old ladies to die.
But isn't it fascinating? Isn't it fascinating that it had to take you to bring that up? Why didn't AOC or I don't know who's a Republican equivalent, but why aren't they bringing that up? Why don't we just say, your taxes are waived this year, people. That should save you, tons of money, and it'd save the government the administrative costs of collecting it. It's brilliant.
But let me bring this up. Not everybody pays taxes. There are retired people. There are people on Medicare. There are people on SSI. There are people in different situations where they don't pay taxes. Yeah. That group should be taken care of differently.
Yeah. Well, that's why you and me are going to get hosed on this thing because as the people who actually pay taxes, there's no way that it adds up for us.
It doesn't. How much was $1,200 worth?
Yeah, that $1,200 is going to cost you $1,500 if it costs you a dime.
Oh no. The if you do the balance, someone said between $6,500 and $8,000.
Yeah.
So now you take the fact that I'm not going to ask your personal finances. I'm not going to tell you mine. But let's just say we both got these checks. Mm-hmm. You have 2 children. I have 4 children. Mm-hmm. So we'll just say we both have 2 children. So that means there would be $1,200 per adult. Mm-hmm. And $500 per child. So that is, let's do the math. That would be $3,400. Mm-hmm. So if the $1,200 was worth, let's be conservative here and say 6 was worth $1,200 was worth 6. So mm-hmm. we multiply that by 3. That's worth $18,000. Right. That's the hit that we could potentially be seeing.
Yeah.
Am I wrong in thinking that way?
I don't think you're wrong at all. And what's further, the cost also comes at the devaluation of the currency at large, right? So as they flood the monetary system with extra dollars that came out of pixie dust and unicorn farts or whatever, however they made this money magically appear, that devalues the currency. So your money spins less well, you know. You don't get as much for it. So suddenly $15 is not a living wage anymore. Great job, everybody. You just sandbagged your everything you've been working for by devaluing the currency. And the debt is the real tax, because the GDP that we have to produce in order to just keep payments, interest payments on the debt, that keeps expanding, so that that can't go back into productive capacity. It can only pay off interest and debt. It's madness what they've done
It's
here.
it's madness what they've done, but I don't think that anyone will truly understand how it will impact the common man, the common woman, the common person. Let me be politically correct. The
Right.
common person within this country until the new tax laws come out and they figured it out sometime around July or August, and they go, holy shit, you've got to change the tax laws from 4,000 pages to 5,000 pages. We've got to find a way to hide how much this $1,200 check really impacted everyone,
Right.
and
And the
change
government
everything.
just took out every restaurateur, every mom and pop retailer. They just sent every small business in America through the wood chipper by forcing them to be closed. They didn't even say you have to take these precautions. You have to be closed, or you have to offer carry out only. They just sent every independent mom and pop struggling business owner through the wood chipper, and then and they handed all of that straight up the ladder to the elite class. So you know, Amazon is going to get stronger, Kroger's getting stronger, Walmart's getting stronger, and they've made this giant oligarchy and taken all this power away from the people. And at the end of it, people are going to be look at all these companies like Walmart and Amazon's and go, look at these big bad businesses and what they did to us. But they didn't do anything to you. The
Mm-hmm.
government did that. The government forced all of these businesses to go under. And the only natural thing that was left to happen is the businesses that were powerful and wealthy enough to withstand the hit, to take the bludgeoning, they survived.
And then you get the frustration that happens on a small business level, like what happened in our community yesterday. Did you hear about what happened?
No, what I miss?
Oh boy. A small business, I won't say exactly where or what it is, put a sign out on the front of their building that said closed for Kung Flu. And then they decided to slam our governor. And then they said, you can still reach us by calling here or doing this.
Fantastic.
Well, it backfired horribly. And this business owner had to write an apology and take the sign down because it was um,
Why? Why?
racially insensitive.
So, so what? I mean, I don't like racially insensitive things, but that person has a First Amendment right.
Correct. So but it's what's also happened with some of these small businesses that they don't know how to handle this because they've never had to have it. This has never happened before in not recorded history, but in the history of everybody that's still alive
Hmm.
that owns a business. This has never happened to them before.
And it shouldn't be allowed to happen to them. I mean,
Right.
it's a clear violation of the First Amendment. You know, like we're talking, you know, you have the right to say Kung Flu, right? Whether you don't, you're not obligated by the Constitution to be a nice person, you know, but
Right.
you are protected from overreach by the government or by the state, by the police force, um, for things that you say, especially on your own property, for God's sakes. But also, this is a violation of our right to peacefully assemble. If somebody wants to go, you know, to a store, that's their right to do that, whether there's a pandemic on or not. You know, that is enshrined in our Constitution, and for it to be blatantly ignored. You know, you can't even go into a store. You can go into approved stores that the Central Planner Soviet Commissar says is okay. You can go to Der Kroger or whatever, but you can't go to you know, to Joe's whatever, Joe's
So
Bookshop or whatever that place is.
I got what you're saying, but I'm going to bring out a very dangerous document, and this is going to be in closing. This very dangerous document, I'm going to read from it because I think everybody needs to understand. And this is Amendment number 1 to the U.S. Constitution. Freedom of religion, speech, and the press, rights of assembly and petition. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abrogation the freedom of speech, or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble, and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Now, that being said, I will say that this business owner's First Amendment rights, he has them. However, he also has to realize that he could lose business because of making that decision.
Sure.
That's part of the thing that I think all people need to understand is we have these rights. The Constitution allows us these rights. The first through the 10th, we've got these amendments, right? And I can read them all. We've got the 11th, lawsuits against the state. We've got the 12th, election of the president. We've got civil rights, 14th Amendment. These are fabulous rules to follow, but there also is some blowback if on the First Amendment, because it seems that's the one that's attacked the most, followed very closely by the second.
Yeah, well, they closed churches in a lot of places too.
My church is closed. My church, Felipe is my pastor. I had him on in the last episode. We talked about how our whole life has changed from not being able to see each other. I gave Felipe Martinez a hug once a week, and I haven't been able to do that in over 6 weeks. And that might sound weird to some people, but to me, that's like it's an expectation.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it's a part of your life. It's a part of your system of being nurtured spiritually. So was your church closed by their own decision to just be safe and close, or was it decreed? Was that enforced by the state?
It was a decision that was made by the church and the governing body.
Okay, because in some cases,
based upon what was going on, they thought it was best to not congregate, and they had heard, we're Presbyterian, so we're part of the Presbyterian Church of the United PCUSA, and that was all kind of a decision that they all talked about at a very high level for the church denomination, and it was left up to the individual churches, and I want to say that all of them did the same thing at different times, of course. But our church decided to do that, towards the end of February, 1st of March.
Well, that's good that they had that decision and they made that decision. And I think that they made the right one. But in some cases, they're being forced to be closed by the state. I don't know if Indiana's done that or not, but in some states they have done that. And, that's a clear violation of the First Amendment that you just read,
Right.
That's the free exercise of religion.
This is a dangerous document, and I'm going to tell you where I got this. This is the Constitution of the United States of America. And you want to know who made this document? Who printed this document?
Who printed the document?
The ACLU. Oh my gosh. I just mixed the ACLU with my rights. How dangerous am I, Clyde? How dangerous am I?
I would, because
I respect what they
ATM
do.
for a while.
I need to avoid small aircraft and
hot tub. What is it? What is it?
Hot tubs with lids.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to bring that up, and you know where I keep this document?
I do not.
Probably with me at all times.
Yeah.
Yeah, keep it in my pocket.
That's good. I mean, I think the Constitution is. I really don't think we should throw this baby out with the bathwater here. I mean, there's a lot of good stuff in that document. There's a lot of good protections, and what. Again, like, people should really take those rights seriously. Not that we have a government and they wrote a constitution, and that constitution gives us these rights. Like they're saying, the founding fathers said, your rights are given to you by your creator. They're given to you by divine right. The Constitution is just a framework to protect those rights. Every state before that didn't protect those rights was, in violation of God's law, basically, is what their opinion on it was. And I think that that's the correct opinion.
Right. And I agree with you wholeheartedly. So I think I'm going to close up. We've talked about so many different subjects. I'd like to also promote your podcast. And the way I found your podcast was through Facebook. I know that I can get to it by the YouTubes, but I'm going to promote it from Facebook. And that is, if you go to your search bar and type in The Barney and Clyde Show, you will find a brick picture that says Barney and Clyde, and half of it's red, half of it's gray, with a yellow and blue line through the middle of it and around the border. And that is Clyde Myers' podcast with Barney. What's Barney's last name?
Barney Quick.
Barney Quick. So Barney Quick and Clyde Meyer.
Yeah, Barney's a historian. He's a teacher and a journalist. He's a great guy to talk to.
Right. So that's one way to promote. Is there anything else you'd like to promote?
Yeah, just go to if you want to find the Barney and Clyde Show. The YouTube's good, but we're just kind of feeling out the video and the stuff. The audio podcast, I think, is much better. We both have faces for radio, so if you just type Barney and Clyde into just about any podcast app, Spotify is the most reliable one. You'll find it right away in the search. You can go to patreon.com/Barney and Clyde to support us. You can go to facebook.com/Barney and Clyde Show and see our posts and get our links from there. You can follow my foraging and gardening pages. The weedeater.net is my blog. I honestly don't blog a lot, but that's my main page. You can the best stuff to follow there would be my Instagram feed, which is just instagram.com/theweedeater. My handle on Instagram is theweedeater, all one word. Oh, and you can go to my author website. I've got a children's book also called What's Up with Miss Katz. There will be probably more in the series at some point, but you can go to clydemyers.com and see my general writing.
Yeah, and I'm gonna. I have, just to let people know, I actually bought that book for my children, and I'm gonna get it signed when we have some freedom here that I can pass on the book and get a signature. So the book should be here next Wednesday. So I'm looking forward on Friday, which is May 1st in Indiana, is a big day.
Cool.
To actually bringing that book to Clyde and getting him to sign it for myself and my children. So I'm looking forward. I
can't wait. Thanks for buying it. I'm really grateful.
And I'd also like to bring up listener support. This is a value for value podcast. I'm not promoting any particular product on here. As you noticed, we did bring up some items on here. But this is all based on listener support. So if you'd like to support me, you can go through anchor.fm to find MUH Liberty and Podcast. That's MUH Liberty, LIBERTY, and AND Stuff, STUFF, all one word. You can also go to Patreon, patreon.com/MUH Liberty and Stuff, and you can find my Patreon. I would appreciate any support. The value for value model works like this. If you find value in this podcast, we greatly appreciate feedback, either through comments, through suggestions, or if you really like it and you want to see it continue, chip in a buck, chip in 50 cents, chip in nothing, but just let me know that you like the podcast and what we're doing here. I really appreciate it, Clyde. Thanks for your time. Yeah,
likewise. Thanks for this has been a blast. I really appreciate it. I love the show. I love the name especially.
Well, thank you very much. And this has been Paul Shin, and you have been listening to the MUH Liberty and Stuff podcast. Thank you very much. Have a great day.